Good evening, my fellow Kenyans, and good evening, Mr. President, because I'm addressing you in particular. I'm addressing you because it has never been like this before. Kenya is at its worst experience ever, and this is not an exaggeration, it is a matter of fact, it is on record. Tomorrow is August the 8th, and there's a plan for demonstrations. It's happening only because people have reached a point of no return, and you have been one to demonstrate this yourself. When you decided the finance bill had to pass, and then it passed, and in a few hours, you are the same person who said the finance bill will not be allowed to continue, and you withdrew it. That to me was my first time to really lose confidence in you, because I thought maybe there could be some hope. But it is always good to look at both sides in terms of positive and negative. And I think while we Kenyans may be very angry at you, you have provided some very important contribution. And the contribution you have made is that you have brought us to the point where we ought to have been a long time to be in positions of questioning the government. So thank you for that. But now I want to analyze seriously what has gone wrong. People keep on asking, when did the rains begin to beat us? And I think that's what I'm mostly interested in. And to talk about this, I want to introduce myself, tell you my name is Ngure Mwachofi. I come from the Taita Taveta County, and I've been a professor, retired in 2019, but my first teaching appointment was in 1975 when I taught high school. If it is true you are born in 1966, I think you are only 11. Anyway, that's not as important, but just to give you context so that you know I am not talking from just out of the air, rather I'm talking from my experiences of knowing this country well enough. I got interested in politics from a very early stage in 1965 when Ian Smith of Southern Rhodesia, present-day Zimbabwe, unilaterally declared independence for Zimbabwe. I was in 11 years old reading newspapers, okay? Now I look at Kenya and I ask myself, how could we have moved through these phases? So let me summarize these phases real quick. There's colonialism. I lived through the first 10 years, from 1953 to 63. And people saw those times as horrible. But I remember going to dispensary and paying just 50 cents to get treatment. Now, 1963, we were filled with so much hope about how we were going to run our affairs as African people. And I'm looking at 2024 and asking, how could we have failed so badly that some people feel like even the colonial times were better? I mean, something has gone really wrong. And I think to understand our present state, we have got to look back and see where we went wrong, so that if we are going to project any good future, it should be guided by our understanding of how we failed ourselves. So let me begin by looking at Kenya as a country that has so much potential, and everybody knows that it is one of the richest, and yet it has some of the poorest people. I did an article in the Standard that's somewhere around February 26th, 2013, at the last presidential debate. And my main comment was that the most absent element, this was published by the Standard, what the presidential debate missed was corruption. Because I came across understanding that corruption is the biggest challenge and nobody has addressed it. And my criticism was on the media, which simply glossed over the question of, so what are you going to do about corruption? And that was the end. There was no follow-up on that. So I think that we need to get serious if we are going to make any serious changes in this country. And to do that, we really have to understand where we went wrong when the rains begin to beat us. So let me use some philosophy, but very basic philosophy, the idea of differentiating a fact, like this is a jar of water, that's a fact. But when I say this jar is beautiful, that's a value. And two people can see this same jar and have different opinions. That is value judgment. But when we are talking about this jar, there's no argument, that's a matter of fact. So there are facts about Kenya, like it's a fact right now that there are serious problems confronting our country. And it's a fact that things have gone wrong because the country has never been in the level of debt that there is. Some people can say debt is good and therefore that's a value judgment, and others think it's bad, that's a value judgment too. But it is a fact that people are angry, they are not happy with the way things have gone at all. Why is this the case? I think you become the problem, Mr. President, because the buck stops with you. You are the president, you are supposed to run this country as you had promised, and people are grieving from broken promises. Why? You promised hii serikali itakuwa ya mama mboga na bodaboda. You presented your platform as the hustler platform where you felt very strongly these dynasties have been running the country wrongly. And many people decided to join you in believing, yes, nothing has ever changed. I get the impression that your aim was just to get into power, which is very different from you having an aim of changing the country according to the narratives you are presenting. Why do I say this? Because you have turned out to be the leader who has run the country single-handedly, like a dictator, if I may say. Why like a dictator? Because when we have the new constitution of 2010 presenting us the opportunity to encourage Kenyans to have real conversations about how the country should run, then we should have done exactly that. How is that going to be possible? It was already provided for in the 2010 constitution. There are 3 branches of government: judiciary, executive, and legislature. What is the purpose of having these 3 branches? Well, it is primarily to make sure that one branch controls the other and the other leg controls the other, so there's a continuous conversation that is ongoing. So that you, the executive, when you overreach, you can be told, no, you're overreaching, this is not right. Now remember, this is a representative system where you are the president serving on our behalf, the citizens. And the same applies for legislators. Members of parliament are all expected to do what their representatives want. So what did you do when you became president? There was a quick mass movement of people joining your party because you lured them into the party, and they joined you. Now, this may have seemed like a good trick, and the people are saying, this man is very bright. Now there will be, opposition will have nothing because whatever elections are done in parliament, they'll always lose. True, and that's what has been happening. Now, if we go away from that idea that you are very bright to have bought the opposition, let's look at what are the consequences that ought to have been considered. First of all, you undermined the whole concept of the constitutionalism that we are hoping for. In other words, it was the same as having a 2010 constitution, but which you are not going to obey, because after all, you have removed by killing the mechanism that the constitution was supposed to have. And you did that by getting these members of parliament to be on your side. So what you missed there was the idea that for you to be a good leader, you ought to have been very happy with people who can give you opposing opinions, and you would have been interested in asking them to tell me more, tell me why this is the case. So in killing this opposition, essentially you got a blank check. And in getting a blank check, you have managed to run the country the way you want. And in running it the way you want, you have run it down to the point that now we have so much going on, demonstrations, and even worse, that so many people have been killed. and people are worried. Nairobi this evening was very, very active with people taking means to go back to Ushago because they are really worried about what might happen tomorrow. So you need to have that in context. And I've observed you as a president, observing the way you've run the country, the way you talk is very clear that you have taken this single-handed approach to everything. I've observed, and you can go back and look at your speeches in places you have visited. I take the first example, Taita, where you are talking to the Taita people and you're telling me, mimi najua shida zenu. Hata, in fact, you don't need to tell me. And you did the same thing in Kwale. How can you be able to help the people get better if all you have to tell them is you know what their problems are? And I'm talking this before even the demonstrations. But more recently, during the demonstrations, when you realize things were not going well, you've gone out on a patch mission. You are trying to fix what is broken, and that's where you made it even worse. How did you make it worse? You went on to tell people, I have money set aside for this, I have money set aside, kwanza mwambieni huyu member of parliament wenu na MC wenu waje, pale nipatie watu mahindi wapate chakula. You are saying this, I think, in Bamba, in Kilifi. And I was asking myself, is our president okay? How does he lower himself to the level of being the person dishing food here and there, number one? Number two, where does he get the money from to dish all this stuff? And if he is able to do this now, why has he not been doing this all along? If that was his idea of being a president, going around giving food. So I think you have really diminished the value of your office because, in my opinion, you are operating on what I would call a reaction mode. You are reacting to the fact that you saw things are going wrong and you wanted to do a lot of assuring. And you went ahead to tell people, I remember again, telling them, si mnaona nimepatia Joe kazi. Hata huyu Aisha Juma pia nitampa kwa sababu ni msichana mzuri. Yeah? You know, you are trivializing the whole discussion about the state of this nation, and people are expecting to have serious conversations where things can get better, but you can't do that by just ravishing everything, by reducing it to that kind of level of discussion. The concept of running a government by using what we call carrot stick diplomacy is so old-fashioned because it goes against the constitution. The idea that I'm here because nyinyi marafiki zangu, I'll give you something. Everything is supposed to be provided in the constitution, and your job is to really do your job, not going from place to place talking to people and giving them assurances, because remember, you already gave them assurances at the time you are campaigning, and as soon as you got into power, you never really have fulfilled any of those. And this is the sense in which I say the country is at its worst, has never been like that before. So let me summarize. You killed the legislature and you killed the judiciary, and therefore you, the executive, became the only person who's governing the country. And so instead of being a leader, you became a dealer. So in your dealership, just like as people sell cars, you are the one who says everything. When you tell people, we are going to vote on this finance bill, and the next thing is they are all coming to your state house, and there have been rumors that they were given 2 million each, and some of them have denied that. You know, that shows some real low level of undermining democracy, because you can't run democracy by telling people this bill must pass on whose behalf. These people are representing the people who voted for them. Why should members of parliament come there to please you? And the members of parliament have to say, shame, 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 shame on you. You get voted by your own constituencies. And then what do? You let them down by going to serve somebody rather than serving them? What is the point of swearing to uphold the constitution if all you do is to go and do the exact opposite? So I'm in total agreement with anybody who thinks there should be a complete dissolution of the government so that we can start afresh. When people are saying you fail in your duty, as I've heard of Okiya Mtata and others tell you the same thing, what they are really saying is, it's not anything personal to you. They are saying that when the system is supposed to work and it is no longer working because you have not done things right, then the best thing is to show your statesmanship. As president, you have a great opportunity that you have broken down the system to a point that we are having these kinds of crises. But you could be the same person who could get in there now and say we are having a fresh start. How? Because you could decide, yes, I accept my folly, and I think I'd rather somebody else take over, and I'm going to make sure that we actually have elections and that we have a fresh start. And if we do that, you can be sure at least you will redeem your name. It is a very unfortunate situation that the military and the police have to be used not to defend the country and the citizens of this country, but to literally fight those who are pointing out that you must go. What happened to the freedom of speech? And when you say you want peace, it's easy to say you want peace, but are you actually providing the conditions for this peace to prevail? And my sense is, I don't think so. So there is a serious problem in this country. The constitution is dead, literally dead. And I want to give you advice, Mr. President, to begin to entertain something better. When you say, I know everything, it's the same as saying, I am full of knowledge, I don't need any more. And in fact, when that is the case, if that's what you believe, what happens? If anybody tells you anything, it will not even enter, it will be pouring. As you can see, it is pouring because you are full. So when you tell the people of Kwale, the people of Kenya, or the people of Taita, I know everything, you don't need to tell me, you are not really helping. You are telling them, I can't listen because I know everything. That's not a leader. A leader ought to be somebody who, when he thinks he knows, he must empty his knowledge to be completely empty, so that when people are talking to you, what they are saying does sink. And if you understand this concept, I think you'll have the best options and possibilities of actually helping your citizens to do what is good for them, because you will be seen as a listener. I want you, Mr. President, to appreciate this very simple idea of empty is full and full is empty. I'm a professor of philosophy, and pardon my examples, but they are meant to help you understand how you have failed the country and how you can redeem it. To be empty is to understand that because you are empty, you are full because you have the opportunity to get more information. And to be full is to be empty because you cannot get anything beyond what you have, and you end up running the country with what you think is right without any consultation. So if you can think about that concept, you'll be the person who is asking the citizens to say what they need, and you'll be the person telling the members of parliament that you want to make sure that they are doing what the people want. When you are telling them instead to undermine the welfare of the people because you want them to vote the way you want, then you have become a selfish Kenyan who is interested in making sure that things work in his favor, and you have no interest of the implication of these decisions that you and the legislature are making. So I think that you have an opportunity to provide the conditions for a transition, and you will be so much full and with some respect when people realize that you have realized and understood that you need to make a change that is drastic enough for you to become the leader who decided, I'm not going to lead, I think I've let my people down. And when Okia Omtata says, Mr. President, you need to fall on your sword, I think he means that very well metaphorically. It is not anything personal. And I wish that you'd understand that and make it a point to make sure that you really redeem this country. Kenya is at its worst. People are most angry, and people feel they're not sure where we're heading. And when we have these ongoing demonstrations, the economic losses are great. And these economic losses will continue to undermine the system. Think of how many companies are pulling out of Kenya to go to Tanzania, Ethiopia, and our neighboring countries. And it's not happening by accident, it's because they realize the environment is bad. Corruption is so rampant, and the kind of cabinet you picked was so poorly thought out, it seems that you became a victim of loyalism. I'm gonna reward all people who are loyal to me. I don't care whether they're educated or not, they're going to be in cabinet positions. And then it has not taken you 2 years to realize these people cannot do their job. And do you remember the time when you made it a point that these people don't seem to know what their job is? You know, that was several months back, and my thought was, great, why are you telling us you think they don't know their job? Fire them and replace them with people who know. But you didn't do that. To me, I see that as indecisiveness, in which you realize people are not doing well, but you are hoping things will be okay. It seems to me that you have taken the Kenyan people so for granted, when we know we have many educated people, like me here, a professor who taught high school in 1975 and retired in 2019. I've done so much out there, and our ideas to you can really change the country and make it a better place. But what do? You bring people in there, many of them who didn't even know what their job was, and even you know that because you made that point. They didn't seem to know their job. And what is the end result? Disaster upon disaster. How can you expect to run the country, get the respect of your people, if their own material conditions are getting worse by the day? So, Mr. President, do not be surprised that people are against your policies, and do not be surprised that they have lost confidence in you. And the reason is that even since the Gen Z movement started, what has been happening, I've been observing this, is that instead of you trying to get out of the deep hole, you're actually digging and getting deeper and deeper. Why? For example, when all these kids were killed, your first statement was, these people are doing treasonous act. How can you call them treasonous acts when they are just expressing what the Constitution allows them to do? And then a few hours, oh, they have spoken, I've heard, and I'm going to make sure I make changes. So how do you expect anybody to see you as credible if on the one hand you have called these treasonous acts, and at the same time you are saying it was wrong and you are giving up on that? And you have some of your sycophants. I remember, I think it was Mutua, the former governor of Machakos, who actually said, to the Gen Z, you have the blood of these people in your hands. And of course, people have come to understand that most of the rioting and burning and killing that has happened, it has happened not because of the demonstrators. And there's high suspicion that anytime you want to justify your intervention by using the force, that it is quite probable that people are paid to go and raise hell so that you can see, you see these people, wanataka maandamano? No way. So when you keep on telling people enough is enough and you're not going to allow this maandamano, you're constantly contradicting yourself. You say they have spoken, they have a right, and it is true they have a right, the Constitution allows them, but then you turn around and say it's enough. I think, Mr. President, you and your loyalists need to be very clear whether you love Kenya or you love power, because all these decisions and ways of seeing the state of the nation are guided by your own personal attributes. If somebody is focused on being in power, then he is not going to see anything else, because power is the ultimate goal. And so right now you might be having conversations on how to deal with this, and if the focus is just how to stay in power, you'll never get it right, Mr. President. If you come to realization that the country is bigger than all of your interests, then you'll be guided by the Constitution, and because demonstrators are guided by the Constitution, you'll all have consensus, because in fact you'll be encouraging people to demonstrate. You could be the person who tells people, I want Kenyans to exercise their right to demonstrate. In fact, I have given them the right to do so, And to demonstrate this, let me suggest that at 11 a.m. tomorrow, Kenyans come out to demonstrate that they have the right to do that. If you do that, you will be the first and only president in Kenya who managed to bring the country down to a point on its knees and then to resurrect it. Like they say, rising from the ashes like the phoenix, and everything becomes afresh. We burn the grass and the whole place looks bleak, and then new things sprout. This is the opportunity you can seize, but you could make the mistake of having this in a prolonged form, and you will continue to fight, and it will never work, because you have reached that point, Mr. President, very honestly, where you have really lost the people. And I'm saying you have a chance of making sure that there's a peaceful transition where you show the country that the constitution can work and that people should be able to resign. You saw in the USA a senator recently, I'm not sure whether it's a senator, who actually resigned without much questions asked. Because people understand, if I've failed my people, I've failed my duty, there's no reason for me to clamor to be there. Now, let me finish by giving the last explanation of the dynamics of what happens when you are dealing with the loyalists. When you are dealing with the loyalists, they feel beholden to you because their desire for the privileges they are enjoying is organized around that idea. And they see you as the person who can give them the cookies or take the cookies away. And this means they live in fear, essentially. And when you introduce fear to your country, you're doing the opposite of development, because there's no country that develops because people are living in fear. That's why I was challenging you to encourage Kenyans to come out and demonstrate to show that they can always say what they need to say. When you have loyalists who are living in fear, they'll come and tell you everything is okay, Mr. President, is only a few people out there who are noisemakers. And I know this because one of your advisors actually told me this is just usual noisemakers. And then suddenly it exploded and he no longer believed that. And I'd wished they'd call me so I can come and have a meeting one-on-one, and I would have told you the truth from the way I understand it. And I think maybe you would have had a different idea. The problem of hanging around your loyalists is that you begin to believe this story and you all begin to suffer what I call groupthink. That's a term we use in political science and in management. Groupthink is when people are so focused on one thing and they are all agreeing with each other, and there's no point where anybody can say, but why are we doing this? Don't you think it's going to be like that? And this groupthink is not an accident. You created it. The moment you bought the opposition and the moment you decided you are going to be rewarding people because they are loyal to you, you stopped the possibility of our constitution functioning the way it was intended to do, which is the three branches of government all need to be independent and be able to work with each other. So, Mr. President, I wish you well. I know that during the campaign previously, Yon Gachagua had occasion to tell Uhuru, Mr. President, don't kill my children. And I think that was an expression of what he thought about fear. But I want to tell you that fear is the one thing that you have to undermine if you want to be a good leader. And you can never run the country by using fear, because when people are living in fear, they are only thinking about their survival. They can't think about any other thing. That's why Kenya is where it is today. I would like to wish you well, and I would like to pray for you that you get to understand these nuances. And I would like to wish the Kenyan people well by asking them a very basic question. If you're already worried about what would happen if there is a revolution, and my answer is, His Excellency will make sure that nothing worse happens, because he's going to make sure that the constitutionally agreed arrangements of how things happen when the president has to step down will be followed. But if you and your loyalists only want to make people believe that if this happens, then there will be chaos, I think that is understandably your desired interpretation, because that's the only way you will continue to be in leadership position. And I've suggested that if you understand the meaning of empty and full, then you will understand that by not being president because you have chosen, so you'll earn the respect, and that respect is the same as being full of respect from the Kenyan people. If you let this deteriorate into violence, then you'll be thinking you are being full by remaining in power, but that's when you'll have emptied yourself and your future generation. May our good Lord bless this wonderful nation of ours that has gone through this suffering, and I hope that you'll take my views as candidly as I've presented them, and I hope you can have conversation with your loyalists and the Kenyan people and bring this state to a different level. We are tired. I am tired of feeling stressed about the state of the condition of this country, and I'd like to see us move on to something better. I think you have an opportunity to redeem your name, although most people think it is too late. But if you follow the suggestions I've offered, and if you have understood what it means to be empty, and by being empty you are full, then you'll know what I'm talking about. Thank you, Your Excellency, and I wish you the best.